Right, okay, the aviation sector is the main focus for the program today. If you look at the headlines, crash plane not on test flight. That's according to the NCAA. And of course, Nigeria's aviation sector on high-risk insurance status over crashes, just as another victim dies. Joining us from Abuja studios live to look at developments in the aviation sector is the former Minister of Aviation, Fani Kayode. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Well, a whole lot has been happening, which has been some source of worry for a whole lot of Nigerians, you inclusive, who's been in charge of that ministry years ago. What can you say concerning this particular sector, which is very, very vibrant and important in the life of a nation?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me say that we're all mourning the death of Chief Solomon Lah, one of the greatest leaders this country has ever had. And my prayers that his soul rests in peace. Coming to the issue of aviation, it has been a very, very difficult period for all of us as Nigerians to witness some of the things that have been going on in the last couple of years. And what I can say and what I should say is that I believe that we should all join our hands together, whether you're in the ministry, outside the ministry, minister, former minister, government official or opposition, to do our best to ensure that Nigerian travelers get a better deal and that lives are protected and the lives are saved. And I think it's been a checkered experience for air travelers over the last number of years, not just the last 2 years. It's been a difficult period. But I think by and large, if only we can all join our hands together, and particularly those in charge of that sector, focus clearly and continue to do their job, I'm sure things would be far better. But of course, it is tragic what has happened, and this is why some of us have made interventions from time to time.
When you talk about the intervention here, I think perhaps let's start talking about specifics. What form of intervention, or should we first of all start by looking at the problems in the aviation sector before we talk about interventions?
Well, there are so many issues, and I don't want to sound as if I'm some kind of aviation critic, or other than the fact that I had the privilege of heading the ministry for a period of time. I'm not an aviation critic. What I am is that I believe that I am somebody that is a leader in this country, or one of the emerging leaders, and I feel that I have an obligation to point out a number of things here and there. But it's not for me to make life more difficult for anybody. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to point out the fact that it is important that those that are in that sector should work hard to ensure that lives are protected. They have many challenges, and these are not just their challenges, they're our challenges as a family, as a nation. Of course, I'm sure they will be in a better position to tell you what their challenges are. I don't want to make life more difficult for them by criticizing them on this program, especially at a time like this. But what I would say, and what I would always say, is that we must join our hands together to make sure everybody does his job or her job properly to ensure that lives are protected. There have been gains in the sector over the years, there's no question about that. But at the same time, we still seem to have a problem in terms of air crashes, and I believe that we need to do far more than we're doing.
When you say everybody should join their hands together to ensure that they do their jobs properly and air safety is ensured, what exactly are you implying?
I'm not implying anything. I'm saying something, and I'm being very clear. I think we should all assist and support, if necessary criticize, but just to ensure that those that are in charge of that sector ensure that people don't die. Encourage people to do their job properly, and where necessary, to criticize. There's nothing implied here. It's a very simple thing. We've had a number of crashes over the last 2 years, and indeed even before then. Lives have been lost. In 2 years, I think it's about 2 years, almost 200 people have died from our skies. This is a matter of concern, and I think any responsible leader, when they hear the facts and the figures and look at this, would have to say, listen, however much you may like whoever is in charge or whoever is involved or who's in that sector, it is a matter of concern. People, as we speak now, are about to board a plane. And it doesn't help very much when somebody says, well, if they get up in the air, it may be an act of God that the plane suddenly crashes. We need to encourage people. and we need to try our best to support them and assure them that our skies are safe. And it's as simple as that. And I think whatever we can do that, I think we should continue to do it. I don't think it's helpful for me to be criticizing people too much that are within the sector. But I think it's important for us to make our own interventions, make our own contributions from time to time to try to, point them in the right direction where we feel that they may not be getting it completely right.
Okay. We've, in the last few years, we've had the airports expanded. We've had some other developments, positive developments in the aviation sector, even to the point of IATA and other agencies, international agencies, commending Nigeria's air aviation industry. Now, would you consider that things that we should do, and how can we improve on that?
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the terminals have been expanded. The airports are beautiful. A lot of work has been done there. There's no doubt about that. And even in terms of administration, one has to commend the efforts not just of this minister but ministers that came before her. I mean, about 4 or 5 ministers have been there since we left. And I think everybody has put in their own efforts and done their bit. Nobody's perfect, but everybody has done their very best. There's no question about that. But my concern is the fact that if within a period of, almost 2 years or so, 200 people have died from our skies, then I think we, apart from concentrating on beautifying airports and things like that, I think we also have to concentrate on ensuring that we have, full compliance in terms of all the rules, all the regulations, ensure that safety mechanisms are in place, ensure that morale is high, people are not cutting corners, and ensure that lives are protected and saved. And that has to be the priority, rather than anything else. I'd rather have shabby-looking airports with safe skies than to have beautiful airports when skies are not safe. And I need to make it clear, I don't think it's helpful for us to be comparing tenures or comparing notes as to who did what. I think it's more, and I'd be glad to have a debate with anybody in terms of my tenure or the tenure of anyone else, one-on-one at any point in time. But I think for now, what we are all concerned about is trying to join hands to ensure that they ensure that people's lives are protected. And where we need to criticize, we will. And where we need to commend, we will. That's what leaders are meant to do, and we'll continue to do it.
Well, it's a little difficult not to compare tenures, considering the fact that you're a former Minister of Aviation, and you definitely have had the experience of wearing the shoes of the current minister.
Yeah.
And, I've read your write-up. It's still in front of me here. I would like to say certain things to you. You definitely did some comparison when you were making this, when you wrote your little essay, as it were. You talked about
quite a long. It was quite a long essay, actually.
You talked about crashes before your tenure, and you also talked about the fact that there were no crashes during your time, and you put it down to hard work and prayers. Am I correct in that?
I didn't hear you. Could you repeat?
I'm saying that it is hard not to compare, because in the write-up you had published and you put online, some people did see that there was some comparison there, and you talked about crashes before your tenure, and during your tenure there were no crashes. You put that down to hard work and prayers.
Yes.
In other words, you still had faith in God, and despite all that you had done, you prayed to God that all will be well.
I'm sorry. You keep breaking. I can't hear you. Maybe you should do it from this. Could you repeat the question?
Perhaps I should just, hit the nail on the head. You have faith in God that, in spite of all that you did during your time, that all will work and there will be no accidents.
Yes. Yes.
So you do know that the hand of faith could always play in despite all your best efforts, right?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No. But of course, I mean, look, listen, the point is this. You need to work hard. You need to ensure that the right things are done and that everybody does his job properly. And you need to ensure there's full compliance with all the regulations and all the rules. Now, having done all that you can possibly do, then of course you have to pray. And I'm a man of faith. I carry my faith into everything. If anybody tells you that prayer has no place in anything that we do, then I believe that that person perhaps needs prayers themselves. It's very important that we pray, but I don't believe that you just sit down and pray and you don't work hard. No, you get down, you pray hard, you work hard. When we came into aviation, or when I came into aviation, it was a situation that, you know the background, you said you read the article. It was a very drastic and a very pitiful situation, tragic situation, where 453 people had been killed in the space of just 1 year. And of course, that's an emergency situation, 5 crashes. And I had to come in to do a specific job, and that job was to stop the planes from crashing. In order to achieve that, we put specific things in place. One, full compliance of all the regulations. In other words, no cutting of corners. The aviation, the parastatals had to do their work, NCA did its work, no cutting of corners. The airline operators had to be put in their place to ensure that they do not do anything that is wrong, and all the agencies that are supposed to oversee the sector are doing their work properly. Secondly, we got rid of all the bad eggs within the sector, removed a lot of people that were not doing their job properly, replaced them with good people. Thirdly, one had to go in with a lot of militancy, because if you make a mistake, people are going to die. So literally, night and day, you have to ensure that you are militant, you act with military precision, you instill discipline, and you ensure that everybody does what they're supposed to do. The slightest deviation could result in a crisis. And we ensured that we didn't have crisis simply because we were not prepared to accept that, we were not prepared to accept mistakes. The third thing is this, or the fourth thing is this: we go into these things with compassion in our hearts. Every life that is lost means that destiny has been destroyed. And you need to be compassionate. You are motivated by your compassion for people and for human life. And that's something else that I think we carried into it. And then most important of all, what we have to realize and appreciate is the fact that despite the challenges we all have in this country in terms of economy, security, and all the things that are going on, every Nigerian has the right to life. It's simply not good enough if people get on planes and feel that, look, perhaps that plane may drop, or you're sitting in your house in Lagos or something, and a plane may suddenly drop on your home or your whole area, as it did a year ago when the Dana plane crashed. These are all the considerations, and you do all that, you ensure that's all in place, and at the same time, you will also do your prayers and dedicate everything that you do to God. And that's what we did, and it worked for us, and I'm sure it will work for other people. You know, and I want to encourage those that are there now to perhaps consider these issues and to continue with the hard work that they're doing. What pains me the most is the fact that, you know, as we speak today, people are still mourning. People haven't buried some of those that died on that crash yet. And people are sitting in their homes crying for their loved ones. And it's a very tragic thing. And it's something that we need to avoid. Whatever it takes, I think we need to ensure that this sort of thing does not happen again. And our history in terms of, or our record in terms of aviation safety in Nigeria, you know, has not been that good. Over a long period of time, we've lost almost 800 people in the space of, what, the last 11 years or so on and so forth. And I think it's a collective thing. I don't think I should be pointing fingers at anybody or saying I'm better than anybody. I think we all have a responsibility to do our very best. And of course, those that are there today have the primary responsibility to do that. Wherever we can help them, we will certainly help them. And wherever we feel they need to be criticized or be told that, look, this is perhaps you should consider this, I think we should do that. What I think motivated me to write that article, because I make interventions on a number of areas, and aviation is just one of them. I try to avoid aviation because one of the things we don't like to do is talk about what our successors in office do. It's something that I do very reluctantly, because it doesn't make life any easier for her. The last thing you want is for a former minister to be on your back over any issue. But what I think provoked this particular one was the fact that the day after the crash, even before the corpses had been buried, even before the parts of the burnt bodies had been taken from the crash site and so on and so forth, even before there was an investigation in terms of the cause of the crash, even before the investigation began, let alone concluded, the PDP spokesman got up and said that all was well, they're doing a very good job, and that the minister should be allowed to continue with her job. I felt that you know, you don't speak like that immediately after a crash until you're absolutely sure that everybody did their job properly. And then, of course, there were other interventions, acts of God and so on and so forth. And I think it's important that we are very focused and clear. where blame needs to be attributed, let it be attributed. And at the end of the day, the President of the Federal Republic is responsible for what happens in our skies and in our country, and the Minister of Aviation is responsible for what happens within the aviation sector. And I think whatever we can do, criticizing has its place. Commending has its place. Sometimes we commend, sometimes we criticize. But to say nothing and do nothing, I think is a big mistake. And this is why we make interventions from time to time.
Tell us about the independence of the parastatals under your watch. I mean, just recently, we've been told, some people believe that the Ministry of Aviation shouldn't even exist, that the NCAA and AIB and FAN can actually do their job independent of a ministry.
No. It would be a very, very ridiculous suggestion that the Minister of Aviation shouldn't exist. The Minister is responsible for everything. The parastatal chiefs are accountable to her, and they report to her, him or her, whoever is there at any point in time. And it's very, very important, because at the end of the day, these are government agencies. The Minister reports to the President, the parastatal chiefs report to the Minister, and that's the structure. It's like saying, the army can have a commander-in-chief but mustn't have GOCs, and the troops themselves should be the ones running the show. No, you must have a minister in place. You must have a strong minister in place that knows what he or she is doing. Now, you asked me about the independence of the parastatals under my watch. When I came into aviation, NCAA was firmly under the control of the ministry, which I don't think was a good idea. I didn't think was a good idea. We had a very good man there by the name of Dr. Dumorin, who I reappointed in 2005 because he was doing such an excellent job. But what we did do was introduce legislation to give NCAA independence, so that Dumorin didn't have to report to me directly, and he didn't have to take my directives. Of course, he still worked under me. I still supervised him, but there was far more autonomy. And when I pushed that legislation through, it went through the National Assembly, and they got their autonomy by the time I left. I finished my tenure. That's number one. Accident Investigation Bureau, I created that agency. We established it, I proposed it, President Obasanjo approved, and we created it. Before then, we had AIPB, which was a part of the ministry, which was charged with investigating accidents and so on and so forth. But I felt that the accidents they were investigating, you can't investigate yourself. You can't be part of the ministry and you are investigating. You have to have an agency that is independent of the ministry and that can report and file its report directly to the presidency, even independent of the minister, and give a copy to the minister. But the minute there's a crash, they're supposed to file their reports to the presidency and just give the minister a copy, so that we don't interfere, or the minister doesn't interfere. That's how we structured AIB. It was approved, and that's how we did it, so that there would be independence. So there was independence for AIB. In terms of the other agencies, you can't give FAN complete independence, and neither should you. The NAMA, which is another very important agency, we had very good people running NAMA at the time, and I didn't interfere in their work at all. We allowed them to do their job, but where they got it wrong, we will come in. And of course, under my watch, we ensured that every single aviation parastatal chief, every single one of them, was doing 100%. Not 80, not 90, 100%. And we did this with military precision, because I ensured that we watched them and we ensured that they did their job properly. Where they got it wrong, we would intervene, and we would either replace them or we'd replace their managers, and so on and so forth. And that is the whole point. You need to give the public confidence that you're doing your job, so that by the time they're on the plane and by the time they're at the airports, they know that they're going to land, go wherever, land wherever they're going, safely and soundly. And you need to imbue confidence. By the time I came in, there was literally no confidence in the aviation sector. People were scared to fly. But by the time we finished, I think we ensured that that confidence was restored and people were confident to fly again. Sadly, almost 3 months after we left, crashes started again. But I must say this, within the last few years, the tenure of Omotoba, who was Minister of Aviation, I think a couple of it, there was Desani Madueke, then there was Felix Hyatt, and then the gentleman I just mentioned came in, Omotoba came in. He had a very good tenure as well in terms of crashes. There were just a couple of crashes under him, and they were military aircraft crashes and so on and so on. So he also worked very, very hard. And there are many wonderful people within aviation then and even now. But I think we all have to join our hands together and ensure that we do a good job, assist the minister, assist even the president, and assist the authorities to provide the best service for the Nigerian people.
Okay, that was then. Let's see if we can bring you back to now, and I'll take you up on some of your comments you talked about. You said I'll give you a quote here. You said the first and most important consideration has to be safety of passengers and the airworthiness of planes, followed by an avowed commitment. So in all of these three, safety of passengers, airworthiness of the planes, and commitment, have you seen any of this existent?
Have I seen any of this in existence?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. Have I seen?
Yeah, that's it. These three you just highlighted in your piece here.
Yes.
Do you get to see them now?
Well, you know, again, you know, I think what I have to say about what's going on today was well enunciated in my essay, and I don't think it's too helpful for me to get on television and be saying more than I should say, because already this is a sector that's in trauma. There's just been a crash. They are also hurting, and I think we all need to be a little bit careful. But you're absolutely right. You know, in terms of those things you mentioned, we have to do that. Airworthiness of planes, for example. When I was minister, I grounded more planes than any other minister in the history of Nigeria up till today. I mean, anything that I so much as suspected could not fly properly, we ensured that NCAA did their job, did the necessary checks, and they grounded so many planes. So in terms of that, it's very, very important. Planes that are old or that cannot fly should not be allowed to fly. And what we did was that we increased the capital base of planes, of airlines, sorry, so that you couldn't even have an airline unless you had a much larger capital base. And when we introduced the new measures, immediately, you know, almost about 20 or 30% of the airlines in Nigeria had to close shop, including those that belong to friends of mine, like Marwa and Jimo Ibrahim and so on and so forth, who are very close friends of mine. But we didn't make any distinction. The minute you couldn't match up to the criterion, your airline had to go. So we did that. In terms of people doing their job and all the other things you mentioned, absolutely, we ensured that. Now, in terms of what's going on today, I think that, you know, definitely there are lapses. And there are lapses along the line. And I think it's important that the minister tries to ensure that those lapses do not take place, because at the end of the day, it's her responsibility to do that. And I am sure that with what has happened now, she may try to do a much better job. But I think it's important that those things are put in place to ensure that lives are protected and lives are safe. There are no half measures in this game. If you get it wrong, if you don't have discipline, if you're not focused, if you're not militant as a minister, if you don't care about what happens, or if you say, well, it's just an act of God and these things are inevitable, you're not giving the flyers much confidence. And in fact, what you're basically saying is that you really don't care. And I don't think that's good enough. We need competence, we need focus, we need militancy, and we need a total and complete dedication to the cause of protecting lives, almost to the point of paranoia, because that's what you need in this sector. You also need something else. When a plane crashes, when we were there, if a plane crashed, the whole airline is grounded, everything is checked to ensure that all their planes are okay. And even before they're allowed to fly again, you had to ensure that you paid the compensation to all the families that had been bereaved in the crash. And consequently, Sosoliso and ADC have never flown again, simply because they couldn't meet up to those measures. Bellevue did, and that's why they started flying again after their own crash. Now, it's interesting that last year when Dana crashed, all this was thrown overboard. They had not paid all their compensation. They were allowed to fly again. They did the checks. They said they were okay. In fact, the minister said a few days after the crash that they were one of the best airlines, and a year later, they've grounded them again. Now, this is an inconsistency. You need to ensure that, and up till today, I might add, the compensation has not been paid by Dana to all the families. I know, because some of their lawyers are friends of mine. And I think that's a ridiculous situation. If you want to ensure that airlines don't cut corners, what you have to do is have strict measures in place and let them know that, look, if you crash, you will not fly again unless your fleet is 100% and they've been checked and cleared by NCAA, and that you've paid all the necessary compensation to all the various families that lost their loved ones. Once you can do that, you'll be allowed to fly again. But to say it really doesn't matter and we have to measure, you know, go to international best practices and allow them to fly, it doesn't create an incentive for them to do the right thing. And I think that's why we're back to square one, and Dana has now been grounded again. But having said all this, I want to repeat, you know, I really don't want to make life more difficult for them. And this is not about opposition and government politics. when it comes to things like this, we rise above our political affiliations, or whether we're in opposition or government. We're talking as Nigerians, as human beings, and men and women of compassion. I don't want to make life more difficult for them by criticizing them now. We don't know the causes of the crash yet. We don't know what happened. But what we do know is that there was a crash, and what we do know is that people did not do their job somewhere along the line. There's not a bolt of lightning that comes from the sky and a plane crashes. When a plane crashes, something has gone wrong. Somebody has done something wrong. And it's very, very important that we try to ensure that these mistakes are not repeated.
But anyway, well, you say, before you became aviation minister, there were 5 crashes, and that was the time of Professor Borishade, I remember then. And when you came on, in your words, you broke the cycle. It stopped during your tenure. What exactly did you and your team did to have actually stopped that ugly situation at that time?
Well, let me just say that I put it down to God alone be the glory, because I don't for 1 minute believe that I was there for 7 months, and I was a minister elsewhere before I went there. And I did other things before becoming minister. I was working as a presidential spokesman. But when I got there for that period of time, like I said, all the things that I mentioned earlier, full compliance, getting rid of the bad eggs, militancy in terms of doing your job, ensuring that you put the right people in the right place, compassion, and the desire to protect life. These are the things that helped us, and of course also having a very good team of people that were working with me. And most importantly, I keep going back to this, yes, and I'm not ashamed to say so, prayers morning, day and night, hard work and prayer. This is what made a difference for us. And also you need to understand something. We mustn't spiritualize these things too much, because I'm a practical man, but at the same time I'm a great believer in the power of God. There are a lot of very strange things that are going on in that sector and in that ministry, and I think that some of these things need to be addressed in terms of prayer. I find it absolutely strange. I spoke in my essay about a number of cycles, 2 10-year cycles and so on and so forth, and one is careful about saying too much about these matters so that people do not get scared and people are not frightened. But the most important thing is that we will pray and leave the spiritual to the Lord, but we must work hard to ensure that we do the right things and that we support those that are there now to do the right thing. Where they need to be criticized, I will not hesitate, and no leader should hesitate from criticizing, but where they should be commended, we'll be the first to commend. And I think it's important to do both. We owe the Nigerian people, the flying public, that much, and we will continue to do that.
Well, we'll just take a moment now from Abuja. We'll come back to you just for us to go to the news studios for another look at the headlines, and we'll come back to you and wrap this up.
Thank you.
Over now to you, Cynthia.
All right, then. Good morning to you. It's over to you.
Well, many thanks, Cynthia. I'll close the moment now with Femi Fani Kayode, former Minister of Aviation in the country. Well, Markway, I think you have the next short of questions.
Yes, just one question before we round off. Mr. Fani Kayode, I just wanted to quickly find out from you. You talked about your faith in God, you've talked about prayers, you've talked about hard work. Did you sense that hard work was absent from this particular crash?
Like I said earlier, it's very difficult for us to make any determination now as to the cause of the crash. It is not helpful for me to begin to say this was as a consequence of lack of hard work on anybody's part. What I can say, however, is that it is important where there's a consistent pattern of behavior or a recurrent pattern of events, that I should be able to say that, look, the minister needs to do a better job or consider the possibility of resignation. I can say that because something is going wrong, but I'm not prepared to say that this accident or any other accident was as a cause of anybody not doing their job. Something went wrong. Let the agencies investigate. I might add that it's very, very important that we get something clear. One of the most important aspects of within the aviation sector are the conclusions of those investigations. In my own experience and in my own time, what I discovered that virtually all the reports that were made concerning the investigations of various crashes that took place before I came in were all reports that were not accurate. which is specifically why I asked the president. I investigated it. The president investigated it. We compared the reports that were given by the aviation ministries at the time to the what they call the NTSB reports that the Americans filed, and you know, they were completely different. We realized that our own people were covering up a lot of things, which is why we set up AIB. But the point is that it's very, very important that the people that are investigating should be able to ascertain specifically what went wrong before we say somebody didn't do their job or something went wrong. And you see, the thing about it is that because this is an area that a lot of people don't dig it. Let me give you an example. When I came into office, Nigeria had not had a radar system since 1979. We had no radar in this country. I mean, it's unbelievable. We used to use Ghanaian radar for people to fly into Lagos and other parts of the country. And one of the first things we did was to set up the 79 radar to cover the Lagos area. And then, of course, I now resurrected the TRACON program, funded it, and the president approved it, and now we have full radar coverage in this country, because by the time the next administration came in, they now commissioned it, but we started that. Why I say that is this: there are so many things that the public may not know that's going on in aviation, but those within know, but very little has been done. And I'm glad that in the last few years, at least those that are there, are building up on the foundation that some of us established. We want to encourage them. However, at the same time, we want to insist that we let them know that we will not shy away from telling them that they may not be doing the right thing, particularly the person that is in charge of the sector. And I keep saying, I am prepared to have a one-on-one debate with the minister directly, not her aides, not her associates, not anybody, the minister directly, about her tenure, if she has any reservations about some of the things that I've said. Having said that, I don't want to make life difficult for her. We should encourage her. We should support her. But where I believe she may be getting it wrong, or those under her are getting it wrong, we need to be able to criticize effectively to keep them all on their toes, to protect the lives of our people. They deserve that much.
Well, we'd like to thank you so very much. I think I'm afraid that's all time will allow us to take. I hope that we'll be able to bring you back to the studio to look at so many other national issues you've commented on, written on, and of course spoken about. Many thanks, Femi Fani Kayode, former Minister of Aviation.
Thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thank you very much.
All right, it takes a moment now, and we'll be back shortly.